Ireland has ended up a Vetocracy. That is John Collison, billionaire founder of Stripe, one of Ireland's great homegrown tech stories on the decision by drone delivery company Manna to pause operations in the country. Hello and welcome to the Atlantic Current. I am Vince Martin from Wall Street in Maine, here as always with Tull McAdoo from the Irish Politics newsletter. We're going to talk about Jeffrey Donaldson, the World Cup, but we wanted to start on this pretty significant piece of business news for the Republic of Ireland, right, Tull?
Yes, folks. Manna Air. It's the home delivery drone service set up by Bobby Heaney in 2019. He's ran into some civil service and political inertia in trying to get his drone delivery company to operate in proper, I suppose, within proper boundaries, within proper regulatory specs. He said he's pausing operations in Ireland because the framework isn't there in regulatory terms to continue doing business.
Business leaders will tell you the worst thing is uncertainty. And certainly for a startup like Manna, you need to know what the rules are. And that's really Healy's point, is they don't know what the rules are. They don't know what's coming. It makes it very difficult to invest. It makes it very difficult to make broader decisions about payroll and things like that. We should point out before this that there has been some pushback as to whether Healy's telling the whole truth, that this is a little bit of a cover story. I don't think you believe that, though, Tull. Regardless, even if it's a cover story, it still shows his point. It shows John Collison's point in that quote we opened with, that Ireland does not seem like a friendly place for business right now.
That's the core argument. And Bobby pointed out in the next post that, contrary to the rumours going around and everything else, that they are planning on coming back. They are planning on doing business in Ireland. They had raised $50 million to scale 1 million delivery drones across their operations. And that this is just a blip, so to speak. Okay, I've a lot of people using the term astroturfing this week. You used it to me in a conversation, Vincent, and actually somebody else used it to me in a conversation as well.
Now, the astroturfing is coming from Healy or his opponents?
His opponents. The astroturfing is coming from his opponents.
That was our conversation from the outside. And to be clear, I'm not speaking on any sort of inside information, just sort of a little bit of that sense from the outside too, for sure.
Yes, I saw some gloating on social media, and this goes back to what you were saying earlier, is Ireland a bad place for, startups or venture capital or whatever the case may be. But one politician, Councillor Conor Reedy of People Before Profit, exclaimed jubilation that the jobs were being lost. An elected politician celebrating job losses in his own constituency. Now, Vincent, let me ask you this. We're all communists, of course, over here in Europe. Terrible, terrible communists. Even if you could find, say, AOC or Bernie Sanders, on what you would see in the United States as the extreme left, what we would see as actually moderate left in Ireland, would they be two people celebrating job losses in their constituency? Would you ever see an American politician celebrating job losses in their constituency?
I can't really imagine it. Even people on the furthest left still are pushing for jobs and are pushing for the respectability of jobs. And to your point, in their constituency is a big qualifier there, right? Particularly in the days now where we have people on both sides of the aisle posting on Twitter and stuff. You could see a Republican politician celebrating the loss of jobs in some bright blue far left district or something like that, or mocking them. But you're in your own constituency now. I mean, it's almost political suicide. The political advertisements would seem to write themselves in about 30 seconds. I don't even think you'd need AI to do it, right?
No, you wouldn't need AI. You wouldn't even need my own nefarious capabilities. I mean, as soon as this guy runs for re-election, I would have thousands of leaflets printed and put in every letterbox in his constituency saying, with a screenshot of the tweet and his jubilation at the loss of 50 jobs. When People Before Profit come out and say, the government's not doing enough to get jobs and all this kind of jazz, I would go, listen, hang on there, pal. You were doing a song and a dance about 50 people losing their jobs.
I mean, that would absolutely be political suicide in the U.S. And I'm imagining it's at the very least a faux pas in Ireland, even on the far left.
I'm actually incredibly surprised that a politician could be that stupid. No. Again.
I mean, that sentence coming out of your mouth, boy, as cynical as you are, you really have to cross the line for you to be surprised at the stupidity of a politician. My word.
Look, I'm always usually aghast at what's going on in America, but I was aghast at reading this fellow's tweet. I was shocked. I was appalled. And And there was a lot of other, like the minute he tweeted it, he got, as the kids would say, ratioed. Even people that might be against drones, but were kind of saying, listen, pal, there's 50 jobs lost. He was like a guy after celebrating, scoring a goal at the World Cup.
Well, he's more like a guy celebrating that the player from his own country slipped on a penalty kick and blew out his knee.
That's exactly it. And there's bigger questions here to be had. And I think Adrian Weckler and the Irish Independent said, if that was Google or Amazon, would we have done any different to help them?
What's your answer to that question, given just what a huge presence multinationals now have in Ireland, particularly in tech?
I think there's a backlash against big tech at the moment. And I'm not sure if it was Amazon or Google doing drone deliveries, would it make a difference? There is a civil war kind of mentality going on here at the moment in regards to drone deliveries, and if it was Google or Amazon, I don't know in the current environment. And we've seen this in the United States also, that there's a backlash against big tech that's ongoing at the moment.
You can absolutely spin this story into a larger global web of similar battles, perhaps in different aspects of tech. Before we do that, let's finish the Ireland part of the story, because I'll ask one more question to do that. Is Collison right? Is Ireland a Vetocracy, or is that just big tech billionaire frustrated that the regulations are getting in the way of his grandiose dreams or the grandiose dreams of others in his in-group, so to speak?
I've written extensively about how we can't build anything in Ireland anymore.
Right.
I mean, there's one organisation has held up billions, literally billions in infrastructure through high court challenges.
Yeah.
Individuals are doing incredible amount of damage to the long-term infrastructure ambitions of this government and of this country. And the reality of the situation is, if that infrastructure doesn't get built, the country's going to grind to a halt economically. All right. Whether that's lifting the airport cap on Dublin Airport, building sewage works. We're currently trying to build a pipeline from the Shannon to Dublin to feed the growth of the city and the growth of the county. But if none of that happens, economically, everything grinds to a halt. Okay, so I think Collison is right. There is a vetocracy going on in Ireland at the moment. I think I'm actually have no doubt about that. I see it every single day. You see it particularly in transport. Everything grinding to a halt. You're stuck in traffic for 4 hours in this weather outside. Why can't Ireland build anything? And we've been here before. We've spoken about this before. America can't build anything. Canada, Australia, all the Anglophone countries, all the former colonies. I'm happy to blame the UK for this, for common law. But
I think that's fair, yeah. And
I think Collison is right, that we are a vetocracy. I mean, one individual person can hold up billions in infrastructure.
Right.
Just one person. There has to be a balance, and your rights have to be respected, of course. People don't want, 100-story buildings overlooking, your park or whatever the case may be. There has to be a balance found. I'm all for that. And here's the oxymoron, right? The same people giving out that, we can't build enough houses, we can't build enough parks, we can't build enough infrastructure, we can't build enough rail or roads, are the same people who are lodging objections to these things.
Yeah. Or supporting the people who lodge those objections. Yeah,
particularly in Sinn Féin, People Before Profit, Labour. You look at the list of objections there, and they're the people blocking it. They're standing up in the Dáil saying, we can't build houses. You go back and you look at the planning objections, and they're blocking that planning in the first place, and they're the Dáil speaking out both sides of their mouth. So this is not a left-wing thing either, okay? So Maeve O'Connell, the Fine Gael TD for Dublin Rathdown, said it was an understandable decision by drone operator Manna to close operations in Ireland. I've called for a national standard for commercial drone operators, which is fair enough. You'd be hard pressed to argue against that point, and I think Bobby would probably agree with that himself. But in the same instance, Fine Gael, the party of, the entrepreneur, the people who want to pull themselves up by their bootstraps, who get up earlier in the morning and all that jazz, they're meant to be the party of the businessman. But Maeve, unfortunately, objected twice to Bobby's drone delivery operations in Dundrum, where she's from, that constituency. So I think actually the people that come out of this worse, most of all, are the people in government, the people in Fine Gael at the moment, because this is kind of kicking the shins for them. You're meant to be pro-business, pro-enterprise, pro-venture capital, but you have your own party member, your own TD saying, no, I don't want any of this. I don't want nothing to do with this. Okay. So it's not just the left-wing people speaking out of both sides of their mouth. Government parties are entirely capable of doing it also. And they're quite more proficient and more subtle about it, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah, a little more experience, right? They have a decades-long head start on their younger rivals. It's unfair.
Yeah, more professional and speaking out of both sides of their mouth, which is, in my opinion, if you want to be a politician, right? This is Tull's top tip if you want to run for office. You have to be able to speak out of both sides of your mouth. Because if you can't, you will lose your seat at the next election. And as to your question about Collison and Google or Amazon, but yes is the short answer. We are Vetocracy. And if it was Google, Amazon or Facebook who were looking for better regulatory frameworks, I think they would have got it already.
It's an interesting story from the outside because, as we alluded to before, I think it is a story that you can place in a broader global context in two ways. One is the political side of that. You're saying politicians need to be able to talk out of both sides of their mouths. And we kind of laugh about that a bit and maybe can be a little snide about that. But it actually is a useful governing skill to tell both sides of an issue that they're going to get what they want and find a way to provide something that at least each side is not going to think that you're such a big liar that they throw you out of office. We have really kind of lost that because we are so polarized, particularly at the federal level. We kind of don't have people talking out of both sides of their mouth anymore. They are straight parroting a party line that insists that everything is the other side's fault, which in its own way just makes it impossible to get anything done. We just had a housing bill passed by the House of Representatives this week, and I forget exactly what the quote in the headline was. The headline was basically like, rare success in the House of Representatives as bill gets passed. Like, that's where we're at. Like, the mainstream media's going, holy shit, they passed something. Oh my God, something passed that a Republican and Democrat both voted for.
In Ireland at the moment, we have the opposite problem. We have the opposition complaining the government are rushing through too many bills. So,
yeah,
there you go.
The other aspect of the Manna story, of course, which is only just starting, is this idea of people fighting back against what they see as big tech. I don't think Bobby Healy would call his company big tech. I think for a lot of people, the distinctions of size don't matter anymore. There is very clearly a movement. We have it in the U.S. here with the fight against data centers. As AI gains steam, people are starting to reflexively side against anything that could be remotely associated with it or with, I think, what they would call, quote, tech more broadly. And do you have that sense in Ireland that this is part of a bigger story, or is this a little bit more of a local niche debate?
No, it's not a local or niche debate. There's a massive pushback against data centers in Ireland as well at the moment.
Yeah.
They're guzzling huge amount of money or huge amount of water, money as well, and energy. And there's a study out last week saying that Ireland is the most expensive country in the world for electricity. And it turns out that we're probably subsidizing data centers on some level. You know, people are tired of massive electricity bills. They're huge compared to anywhere else in Europe. And data centers are taking the blame, which is not the full picture, but, you know, they're an easy bogeyman. They can't really fight back. Quite frankly, their data centers public relations people are the worst public relations people. I don't know, is it the same in the USA? And I'm looking at them and I'm thinking, God, you're all over the place here, pal. They're talking about that data centers being the kind of benefits to society that religion once was or stuff like that. And I'm thinking, no, you got to explain to these people that they're not going to be able to access Tinder or Grindr or use their bank cards or listen to their favourite podcast like ours. You need to tell people that your whole life shuts down, pal, if you don't have a data center.
Yeah, there's a huge podcaster here in the U.S., I think one of the top 10 in terms of audience, named Theo Von. He's kind of Joe Rogan-esque in the sense that his pitch seems to be we're going to have on a lot of different people from a lot of different backgrounds and do absolutely zero research into whether their claims are correct or whether they have any actual expertise at all. But he got roasted a little bit because he was on his podcast, I think, the last episode. And he said, I don't want data centers. Who wants these data centers? You know, and everyone's like, well, you know, your 8-figure annual salary from distributing a podcast probably goes away. I'm not sure how he thought the podcast got from his studio to the phones of his listeners, but somebody should have explained to him at some point that data centers are along the way. And the PR in America has been equally bad, in large part because I honestly think that the people in charge in big tech kind of never really occurred to them that this was going to happen, right? The data center business it's steadily grown pretty quietly. So I don't think anyone at Amazon or Meta or Google they didn't have a campaign ready to go. They didn't have people hired. They didn't try to soften the ground, so to speak, and shape public opinion. I think they just thought, we're throwing up a server farm in the middle of nowhere, Kansas. Who the hell cares? To me, it's not a coincidence that the backlash has come at the same time AI really has jumped into the public consciousness. When somebody like Theo Vaughn says, I don't want data centers, I do think if he thought about it, he's smart enough to understand that he needs a data center to run his podcast. He doesn't want the data center that's going to create the voice that in 8 years, his podcast is now an AI-generated version of a dopey, not great former stand-up comedian.
Vince, I'm going to tell you an anecdote. It's a conversation I had with a politician. I sat down with a politician. This must be 4 years ago. And he was talking about a data center being built in his constituency. And it was a very bright fellow. He's a very detailed policy man. But when I asked him how did he think his social media post got from his mobile phone to the general public, he said to me, from the cloud. I went, the cloud? Right. I says, where do you think the cloud is? I said, I don't know, I just get that, it's up there somewhere. Our listeners can't see us, but I'm pointing at the sky, and I looked at him agog, and I says, are you mad? It's in a field in County Offaly somewhere, or County Laois, where they operate flatlands and that kind of thing. This is why they need a data centre in your constituency, so you can send your tweet. It's not airy-fairy up in the cloud somewhere.
Right.
Deputy.
I guess that's fair. People think of wireless internet and things like that. Yeah, it just kind of gets bounced around. I guess that's not completely ridiculous. For a politician, maybe, but for the average person in County Offaly, maybe not.
But, it's they think it's in the cloud, and I think sometimes they think everything's in the cloud, and the cloud is up in the sky or something. I have no idea. Do their tweets rain from heaven onto their other people's devices and things like that? I mean,
tweets come from the other direction, I think.
Yeah, this is the level of intelligence you're conversing with some politicians when you're trying to have a serious conversation about tech.
Yeah.
That they don't understand it on a very basic level. Politicians do not understand tech, and a lot of people do not understand tech also. Now, I don't think we need data centers to be making cat memes on AI, do we?
Well, how else are you going to make the cat memes? You just said they don't come from the cloud. We need our cat memes to do. How are we supposed to live?
Yes, without cat memes. I mean, there's an argument there to be made. Why don't we use these data centers responsibly? And do we need any more cat memes? Do we need any more, AI-altered politicians? It's sucking, 1 million gallons of water every year or something like that.
Right.
We're going to have to find a balance somewhere. And if the governments don't get on top of it, there will be a backlash like they haven't been expecting.
No.
The same way that there was a COVID backlash, there's going to be an AI tech backlash that I don't think governments are prepared for.
No, I don't think they're prepared for. And I think part of the problem is, as you said, that we have a lot of politicians who don't understand tech, and that gap just grows every year the faster the tech moves. But even here, we have no coherence to how we are approaching AI. When the Trump administration came into office, they were hugely hands-off, hugely deregulatory, based on the idea, which is what everyone in tech says, which is basically the U.S. needs to do it because if we don't win, China will win, and then we're all screwed.
Yes.
And they have used that argument to kind of shut down dissent, both, I think, in terms of DC and state level governments, as well as tried to use that argument in public. But even the Trump administration seems to have reversed course a little bit. They floated the ideas of actually taking stakes in the AI companies, which is a credible example. There's more than you would think of Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders agreeing. But there aren't people at the federal level here who I think really have an understanding of how this tech work, what the downstream effects are and can be. But the bigger issue goes back to my point is you're saying reasonably we need a balance, right? We should have access to this information. We do need data centers for the things that society wants. And in some cases that are good for society. We have no mechanism left in the United States to have that balanced argument. Not that long ago, we used to have kind of centrists in Congress and the House or the Senate whose job in part was to kind of facilitate those conversations. There were men and women in both the Democratic and Republican Party who were known as people who could cross the aisle, who could work on these kind of projects. And we had some major things passed. I don't even know who those people are. The people in the Republican Party have all been purged because they were not loyal enough to Trump. The people in the Democratic Party may soon be purged because they are not anti-Israel, far left economic policy enough. That's what worries me. AI is this thing where we really need a societal conversation. And in the U.S., who ostensibly is the country leading the AI revolution, we have absolutely no framework. I don't even know how you would start having that reasonable conversation among the kind of the key stakeholders in D.C. and in the industry.
Well, the main issue at the moment in regards to China is that I saw the main United States general in charge of cybersecurity told a closed session of those security committee people that AI had hacked its most secure systems, not within days, but within hours. And the fear there is at the moment China or Russia will be able to do that in a couple of months. And I think there's more fear within the security apparatus of the United States and Europe, what AI can do, rather than, cat memes at the moment that are all focused on, can our nuclear weapons be accessed by some fella with a laptop in Timbuktu? Back to the politics side of it, when you talk about crossing the aisle and that kind of stuff, that's seeping into Irish politics at the moment, right? It's getting there. We're not quite at the United States level yet, but it is getting there. And politics has always been a contact sport. And sometimes you learn to work with the guy that's after throwing you the box or that's gun studs in on you and things like that. But somewhere along the line, it stopped being a game of skill and it's devolved into a contest who can clutch the pearls the most. It's as if every minor issue that voters complain about, it's a personal affront to national democracy or something, I don't see us getting away from that anytime soon. I think it's going to get worse. I think it's going to get much, much worse.
Yeah. I mean, I think here it absolutely is. That's something I've been thinking about a little bit the last couple of weeks because we've spent about 10 years with people looking to kind of the after Trump. Would we get some kind of normalization, the temperature turned down? I am increasingly of the belief that I don't think there's going to be an after Trump. We've seen a couple things that we've talked about on Twitter with Tulsi Gabbard, the outgoing director of national intelligence, and Rand Paul, senator from Kentucky, just jumping headfirst into bananas conspiracy theories about the pandemic. We're watching the online right in America just kind of fracture. Tucker Carlson has on his show this week, Victor Bout is one of the most infamous arms dealers of the century, probably the most infamous, closely tied to Russia, has been literally called, quote, the merchant of death. I can't imagine what he's going to talk to him about, but I'm sure something about, some unbelievable conspiracy, Russia being the victim. There is a sense, if you look at the right in particular, and we'll get to the left in a minute, that there's nobody left. I mean, there is just nobody left. Rand Paul, I thought, was a reasonable, somewhat principled guy. He's gone. Gabbard, we knew, was a lunatic. But, if you just look at for reasonable people in their politics or in their thought leaders or in their media, Fox News is softened on Trump. They're full bore into all this stuff. Now, on the left, we have a huge swing to the left in recent elections. And I would argue a little too far left for a number of reasons. I don't see it getting any better. And to me, the point about AI is the timing is just so important because this technology is going to be revolutionary.
Yes.
There are legitimate worries that, it can make, for instance, existing cybersecurity capabilities obsolete. Funnily enough, some worries that it's going to make Bitcoin obsolete. Was once you get to like quantum computing and stuff like that the supposedly immutable blockchain will fall apart. People will just be able to steal your Bitcoins. That one's a little funnier than, for me anyways, doesn't quite rise up to the level of cataclysmic disaster. But
you know my opinion on anything crypto, Vincent, don't you? You only use it to pay your drug dealer, perhaps.
Yeah. You're rooting for the quantum computers, I'm well aware.
Yes. Back to your point about the Republican Party fracturing. It's fracturing quite openly for everybody to see. You talk about Tucker Carlson there and he's talking about Trump being weak. I think he called him I don't take you seriously, is what he said, if I'm not mistaken. And he's gone quite a bit, anti-Semitic, which was never the purview of the Republican Party ever. There was something.
No, that is a big switch,
Something the Democrats were kind of always labelled it in secret, but it turns out the Republican Party is rotten with anti-Semites now at this stage.
That strain of far-right stuff that goes back to at least the 1950s, there has actually been much more of an anti-Semitic nature to a lot of that. Some of the underground right-wing newspapers that were around in the 1980s and things like that. But the mainstream party, the politicians, particularly from Reagan on, were generally quite pro-Israel, in part because so many American Christians were pro-Israel because they actually believe that, the rapture is going to start in Israel. Israel was a key part. That's right. It's a good thing this is not a video podcast. I try not to keep a straight face explaining this to you. But yeah, I mean, American Christians have soured on Israel notably in the last couple of years. And I think there are a lot of reasons for that and a lot of concern for that. But that latent anti-Semitism in the far right portion of the right-wing movement generally wasn't really part of the Republican Party. And I think, yeah, it's certainly becoming a huge part of right-wing media right now, which is pretty wild and very unfortunate, let's be clear.
Vincent, you talk about the Christian right there and politics and religion, Vincent.
Well, we're not in a pub, so we can talk about it.
Yes. Jeffrey Donaldson, the former Democratic Unionist Party leader, was found guilty during the week of 18 historical sex offences, including rape, sexual assault against children, and all manner of terrible things that you can do to a child. His wife, Eleanor Donaldson, was found unfit to face a conventional trial on mental health grounds. She was facing something called a trial of the facts. I don't know if you have that in the United States.
No.
She was tried on the facts that are provable, is the long and short of it. She was found guilty of aiding and abetting her husband in his nefarious acts, and there was quite heavy tones of religion in the trial. It struck me quite strongly reading the reports about how religion was a big part of everything that was going on in their lives while he was committing these despicable acts.
Yeah.
You know, and I think you've had some history there in the past, and so is the Republic of Ireland, now it has to be said. We have a long history of so-called very religious people committing quite nefarious deeds, quite terrible deeds, quite awful deeds that are still reverberating in true Irish society today.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, we're no stranger to that either, and it should be said. Our Catholic Church has paid out billions in settlements, awful, awful stories, priests being accused and shuttled from parish to parish and state to state. The Southern Baptist Church has had a scandal in recent years. It unfortunately seems to be a global issue, hardly one that's limited to a single country or a single faith.
No, it's not confined to Presbyterianism or Protestantism. Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, has a long, long history of this as well also. But Jeffrey Donaldson, he was found guilty of all these terrible things. He's probably the most high-profile politician in the country to ever accused of and found guilty of such things, such terrible things. Are you aware of Jeffrey Donaldson, may I ask, from across the pond?
Not at all, to be honest with you, no.
No.
Right. It's. You mentioned you were going to talk about it, and it did kind of occur to me. I'm particularly in what you might call the post-Epstein era. I'm surprised the story has not had any purchase here, either in traditional media or in online media, as far as I can tell. I was vaguely aware of who he was as a politician. I don't think I was at all aware of any of these allegations or things like that, no.
Okay, I suppose we better give his biography first to give you a sense of our American listeners who he was. So, in 1985, when he was elected for the Ulster Unionist Party, the UUP, the other main Unionist party in Northern Ireland, to represent the South Down constituency, as it was at the time. And before his election, he worked for a South Down MP called Enoch Powell. Have you heard of Enoch Powell?
I have heard of Enoch Powell, yeah. Yeah, he's one of the more notorious figures in UK politics of the 20th century, right?
His very famous Rivers of Blood speech.
Yeah.
Okay. And it must be pointed out, there was some serious allegations have been made about him in the past also in regards to very bad activities. So
yeah, Powell was a far right.
Right. He had very, very far right views, and his very famous speech, Rivers of Blood. When you say he's a firebrand, if you look up any of his speeches on YouTube, he's quite a softly spoken Englishman from the Midlands, if my memory serves me correctly. I think he's from Wolverhampton, is it?
To an American, he seems stereotypically British. His appearance does not match his words at all.
Yeah, his appearance belies his reputation, you know, and whether you like it or not, he was a good orator. He could pull a speech together, and he's quite an accomplished man on many levels in classical studies in World War II. But the Rivers speech thing is something that he'll always be remembered for. And Jeffrey Donaldson worked for him. He worked for James Molyneux, another, I suppose, firebrand Unionist MP. And when Molyneux retired, Donaldson retained his seat comfortably for the UUP. But his unhappiness with the UUP was over this Good Friday Agreement. Didn't agree what was going on there. All Catholics are bad and all nationalists are bad and all that jazz. And and he didn't want the Good Friday Agreement to go ahead. I think he was the kind of a lone wolf there, opponent of that within the Ulster Unionist Party at the time. He was the more high-profile opponent of it within the party, and in 2003 he quit the Ulster Unionist Party and joined the Democratic Unionist Party, and he quickly rose through the ranks, no longer a politician of protest. He was a key figure in the DUP, in their chain of command, and he developed a reputation as a very strong media performer and policy maker. He was an MP for 27 years, okay? So he was a big, big fish, albeit in a very small pond. But as is the way with these provincial politicians in Northern Ireland, they have an outsized shadow on Irish history. Some characters more honourable than others, and Jeffrey Donaldson had a cast a long shadow because he was seen as amenable. You know, he spoke about, going on his holidays in the Republic of Ireland and all this kind of stuff before, in a way maybe an Ulster Unionist leader wouldn't have talked about going on his holidays in Ireland. I spoke to one politician who met him one time in Wexford and said he was a very genial fella. He said you could have been talking to, you could have been talking to the nicest guy in the world, but his wife was basically found guilty of aiding and abetting him. Okay.
Yeah.
And there was some insight to the state of the marriage and what was going on around them in the DUP circles and stuff like that. But when she was challenged at one point by the husband of one of the victims on why she stayed with Jeffrey Donaldson, she replied, "If I was to leave Jeffrey, what would the neighbours think?" Okay.
Yeah, that's a throwback to another era, boy.
And as I say, Christianity kept surfacing in the trial. Donaldson was wearing that famous fish pin, the very famous Christian symbol. Yeah. It was quite obvious and quite clear from the trial that the church appears to have known about Donaldson's abuse, understood the danger he posed to children, and still chose silence over action.
Yeah.
Right? That is the ugliest part of it, not the pious vocabulary, not the public religious posturing. And we have a long history of that in the Republic as well. In case anybody says I'm on my soapbox here, giving out to Presbyterianism, Catholic Ireland has a long history of that also.
Yeah. So. Yeah. And Catholics on both sides of the ocean, unfortunately, have a long history of that. What will the neighbors think? In the way that I try and see the world now, I see the insanity of it, but that resonates with me a little bit. I have known a lot of people in my life for whom that thought would not be nearly as outlandish as it probably sounds to some listeners, and I think particularly younger listeners. If you're in your 20s and you're listening to me sit here and try and give some context for that, what sounds like just an insanely evil statement, to probably think I'm nuts. But that sense is one that I am familiar with, even though I don't believe I would ever have it myself.
So yes, Vincent, in Ireland we have a phrase is the Valley of Squinting Windows. It was an Irish man called Brinsley McNamara. I think he's an Irish American. It's a classic text, and it was ritually burned, would you believe? They threw it on fires in Ireland in the 1920s. And it just kind of reflected what he thought about, everybody knew what was going on, but they weren't talking about it. They weren't saying anything. Yeah. Everybody knew, and they were complicit. They were complicit in their silence.
Of course.
A nation of twitching curtains or a nation of squinting windows. And the same goes for Presbyterianism at the moment, that everybody probably knew and nobody said anything. And as we're recording this, it's almost 8 p.m. in West Cork time. The stories are breaking that senior figures in the DUP, the political party, knew also and didn't act.
Yeah.
So I think the story has a bit to go.
Yeah.
I think the DUP is going to suffer for this politically, because if the allegations are true in the Belfast Telegraph today, then some other DUP people are going to be in trouble as well also.
I'm surprised that this story has made seemingly no entry into America, because we have a good number of people in the U.S. on both the left and the right now who are convinced that these kind of horrors are actually just standard, that they are regular, that there are politicians all over the country and indeed all over the world doing this on a regular basis all over the place. So I am surprised it has not penetrated American discourse, and that may change. But yeah, you can see how just unbelievably politically damaging it would be. I don't think we've had a scandal quite like that. I don't think we've had a sitting politician of any renown being convicted on these kind of charges.
I think it would be the equivalent of, I'm thinking, Lindsey Graham getting caught or something like that.
Well, since I'm in America, I'm going to make a joke about that.
Okay, I've seen the allegations.
Yeah, I was going to say, it's very funny that he's the one you picked out, because I think if you knew it was one out of 100 senators was doing that, Lindsey Graham would be. I think even 80% of the other Republican senators would choose Lindsey Graham as the most likely candidate. Now, to be clear, he's not. He's just as far as we know, he's not a child. He's just a groveling, gaping, not a child molester.
Yes, he's not a great character, and I do not recommend anybody going on X and putting in Lindsey Graham and allegations into the search bar. Okay.
Yeah.
I do not recommend that at all whatsoever. Back to more jovial terms, back to a good news story. I don't want this to end this podcast.
No. We came to the U.S. on a bad news story, so we'll stay in the U.S. on something of a good news story, right?
Yes. The World Cup is on, Vincent. Are you watching?
I really have not watched too much, I'll be honest with you. I have followed it. It does seem like it's been a pretty good success, right?
From the outset, I think the fans are having a great time.
Yeah.
I think everybody's really surprised at how welcoming the people of the United States have been. They were expecting Trump-like demons of doom to be met on the street corners of the United States, but it turns out everybody's incredibly welcoming.
Yeah, when we're not on Twitter, we're generally decent human beings.
Yes, I mean, bars have been drank dry. Ireland's reputation as the best drinkers in the world has taken a battering from the Scottish.
Yeah, that loss to Czechia is having long-term implications, right?
It is indeed. I mean, you could have imagined Scotland and Ireland having a drink-off when they both got knocked out of the World Cup in Boston to see who takes home the real World Cup. There's some implications, Vincent, though, about this World Cup that America has been scratching their head in wonder at. I think it raises some unsettling questions for Americans. Chief among them, how come Europeans get so much vacation, as you call it, in the United States? How come we're able to fly thousands of miles across the USA, which is much more expensive than Europe, would you believe? Far more expensive than Europe.
Yeah, it's funny how that works. That's true, yeah.
But every time we switch on the TV, there's thousands of fans casually following their team to another state or another country in the North America.
Taking road trips and documenting them on Twitter. There have been a couple of accounts that have just blown up telling stories about seeing gas stations in Kentucky.
So I'm guessing a lot of Americans are wondering, how is Europe able to afford all this if we're so poor?
Sure that there is a little bit of that. There are a lot of people who I think are just impressed by kind of the national pride and by kind of the joy with which people from Europe and other countries certainly have come to support their team and things like that. I mean, this is going to be like the most sincere, the most optimistic thing I've ever seen on the podcast. It does seem like the World Cup has kind of done what international sport's supposed to do, right? It has been a good competition. It has people from different cultures meeting, learning about what we share, learning about what's different. I do think it's been a remarkably successful event as far as I can tell.
Right. The Wall Street Journal, okay, we did a whole podcast on this. So we'll put that up on our Substack and people should listen.
Yeah, episode 41 on the Europores. Yep.
Europores, right?
Yeah.
So the Wall Street Journal has told the United States and told all its readers, we're dirt poor. We're dirt poor, right? And I think this has consequences for the Wall Street Journal because everybody's going to be looking at the Wall Street Journal article and realizing actually the Wall Street Journal is gaslighting us. They were gaslighting us. Europe has been pretending to be poor for so long to try to get Americans invested in us, and it turns out we're quite wealthy and we're having to laugh on the United States. We're having the last laugh on the United States.
Obviously, there are hundreds of thousands of people in Europe who can come to the United States for 2 weeks and have a hell of a time and spend a hell of a lot of money. That does say something.
You say 2 weeks, Vincent. This tournament's going to go on for a whole month.
Yeah, but I mean, the Tartan army they have reinforcements coming, right? Or whoever it is.
Well, they might be going home pretty soon. They got beaten.
Well, that was a bad example. You're right.
So the three biggest partiers, I think, of the Scots, the Norwegian, the Dutch, the French have put up a good show as well. They've just blown the whole gasket open on that. Europe is not really poor at all. So, Vincent, we are ending on a good news story. I think that the World Cup has been fantastic for everybody that's at the World Cup. Fantastic for the United States. Tough time for waitresses, I think. Europeans are refusing to tip them and are demanding proper wages for their staff. I've seen that pop up a few times on a few news channels.
Yeah. I worked in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, which is a resort town on the coast that would get a lot of Canadian visitors and a few from Europe. And that was always a big thing. In the summertime, the peak season, managers would actually pay attention to tourists and would actually make a point of making sure that no individual server got too many tables of foreigners. Because, even back then, if you got a table of Americans, you might get 20% on a $150 bill, whatever it is. And if you had a table of foreigners, you might get $3. That's long been a known thing. It's always struck me as a little weird that foreigners refuse to go along with it. But the flip side is when I'm in pubs in Ireland, I always tip. I cannot sit there and not tip. So part of me is sympathetic too. I'm always leaving like €2 for every pint of Smithwick's I get in Dublin. It's hard to get out of your habit. So I sympathize a little bit. But yeah, if you're here, just throw a couple bucks down. The servers literally make $3.50 an hour before tip. So
yeah, and we're clearly not so poor Europeans that we can afford to do something.
No, but those are poor Americans if you don't tip. So
they are poor Americans, yes. So folks, I'm going to wrap it up here on a cheery news story.
Yep. Cheery news story. And coming on Tuesday, we're going to do part 1 of our Trump biography, which I am cheery about. I'm really excited for it. I know there's going to be a little bit of controversy to it, but I think it's a great story, and I think it's going to come out well. So that's one more thing to look forward to after the group stage wraps up this weekend.
Yes. I will be here physically, Vincent. I'm not sure if I'll be here spiritually because I've been up to 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning watching the World Cup.
Have you jumped on a team? Who's your...
No, I'm a plague in all their houses. I'm there to watch the sorrow and pain of their loss.
I see. Yeah, that part's pretty compelling too. I like the idea of jumping on the Ivory Coast bandwagon.
Because the Irish flag upside down.
Yeah, the reverse Irish flag. I won't root for the U.S. It's not a political thing. It's just much more fun. I would much rather see, another country where soccer really matters win than just national joy rather than the U.S. win. And 10,000 people being excited and 320 million shrugging and going back to work, basically.
There was a famous vox pop there done during the week where they went to the New York Knicks celebration party and asked a bunch of people who they'd like to see to win the World Cup. So the Atlanta Braves were mentioned. I think they're a baseball team, Vincent, even though you know that. Are they a baseball team or a hockey team?
Yeah.
Baseball team.
No, they're a baseball team.
Right, okay. And
used to employ my great uncle, believe it or not. My great uncle was a coach for the Atlanta Braves.
Really?
Family trivia. Yeah, family trivia. Yeah.
It's a great piece of family trivia. I think
it was a good one.
Were they a TV show or a movie? Was a movie made about them, I think?
No, that you might be thinking of Major League, which was the other, the team was known as the Cleveland Indians at the time.
Okay.
They have since changed their name. They're now known as the Cleveland Guardians, but that is one of the funniest movies ever made. I will not argue. You don't need to know baseball. Watch that movie if you've never seen it. Major League, 1989.
So the people that are winning the World Cup, according to New York Knicks fans, are Manchester United, the Atlanta Braves.
Well, they're tough.
Yeah, they're not a country, but okay.
It's funny that they picked Manchester United, who hasn't been good for 10 years.
Yeah, something like that.
They picked a Premier League team, but also like a mid-league Premier League team. That's just great.
Yes, there was a couple of teams mentioned that are not at the World Cup. And there was hockey teams and basketball teams and every other team in the world was mentioned except, the Germanys or the Brazils or the France or Spain's who were probably going to be in the final group stages. So it was interesting to see that a lot of Americans do not care very much about the World Cup.
No, it's just, I don't think Europeans quite get how far down the hierarchy soccer is outside of these couple weeks. Yeah. It's very much an afterthought. I don't mean that to be insulting. It's just, it's the fifth national sport and quite a distant fifth.
Yeah. Okay. Well, there's more to come. I'm Tull from the Irish Politics Newsletter.
And I'm Vince Martin. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.